The night my son slid that nursing home brochure across his dining room table, he had no idea the company paying his mortgage had my name on 51% of it. He found out about 4 minutes later, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Earl Grady. I'm 59 years old. And I learned something that night I already knew but needed to be reminded of. Patience isn't the same as weakness. My son forgot that. He won't forget it again. I started Grady Electrical and Construction in 1989. I was 24 years old, had $11,000 in savings from 3 years of working electrical crews, a used van with 140,000 miles on it, and a phone number I'd printed on cardboard and taped to telephone poles around 3 counties. No investors, no family connections, no business school, just me. A willingness to work before sunrise and the understanding that nobody was coming to hand me anything. By 2001, I had 22 employees. By 2010, the company was clearing $8 million a year in contracts. By 2024 dollars, Grady Electrical was worth somewhere around $47 million. I still owned 51%, majority shareholder, never announced, never advertised. Most of the board had never met me face to face. Everything ran through Leonard Parrish, my attorney of 20 years. Quiet man, sharp as a tack, absolutely reliable. I kept my life simple on purpose.
Same house on Birchwood Lane I bought in 1997. Same kind of truck, currently a 2011 Ford with a crack running up the passenger side of the windshield.
I fixed my own gutters, mowed my own grass, bought store brand, everything at the grocery store. Not because I had to, because the habits that built a company never left me, and I saw no reason to change them. My neighbors thought I was a retired contractor on a fixed income. That suited me just fine. Ryan came into the business in 2016. He was 28, sharp, personable, good with clients. I'd watched him long enough by then to think he had the right instincts. I brought him in as operations manager, moved him up to regional director after 2 years. And when our CEO retired in 2020, I approved Ryan's appointment to the top seat. The board knew the majority shareholder had signed off. Ryan never asked why the vote went so smoothly. He just figured he'd earned it on his own merit. That was the first sign I missed. He met Corinne Hartwell in 2018 at some charity event downtown. Her family had the kind of money that comes with an instruction manual for how to treat people who have less of it. Gerald Hartwell, her father, had built a commercial real estate portfolio and spent the following decades making sure everyone in the room knew it. Her mother Nadine collected social appearances the way some people collect coins, carefully and with a strong sense of which ones were worth displaying. They were civil to me the first year, carefully civil, the way people are when they haven't yet decided what category to put you in. After Ryan made CEO, the civility became something thinner. Corinne started referring to the company as Ryan's business at dinner parties. Gerald once told a mutual acquaintance that his son-in-law had turned around a struggling regional contractor. I built that contractor. I was the only reason it hadn't struggled. I heard all of this through Leonard. I didn't say anything. Then the land issue started. I owned 11 acres off Route 9, held in an LLC called Birchwood Holdings. Bought it in 2003. Nothing fancy, just flat land I thought might be worth something eventually. Turns out Ryan had drawn up an expansion plan for a new equipment and logistics yard, and those 11 acres sat exactly where he needed an access road. He didn't know it was mine. Through Leonard, I watched Ryan spend 6 months trying to buy that property. The offer started at $280,000, moved to $410,000, then $500,000 each time Birchwood Holdings declined. Leonard told me Ryan brought it up in a board meeting and called the owner some stubborn old man who doesn't understand what he's sitting on and doesn't want to be reasonable. That stubborn old man had been approving his expense reports for 4 years. About 3 months before the dinner, Leonard flagged something that shifted my attention. Ryan had hired an outside financial consulting firm to evaluate options for acquiring minority shareholder stakes in the company. It wasn't illegal, but it was the kind of move you make when you're trying to quietly consolidate control. And it told me Ryan had started thinking of Grady Electrical as his company to own outright, not just run. I started paying very close attention after that. 2 weeks later, Ryan's assistant called me on a Tuesday afternoon, said Ryan wanted to have a family dinner. The Hartwells would be there. He wanted to reconnect and catch up. Those were her exact words. Ryan and I hadn't eaten a meal together in 9 months. I knew what this was, not the specifics, but the shape of it. I called Leonard that same evening. We spent 2 nights going through every scenario we could construct. I dug out the shareholder agreement, reviewed every clause. Leonard pulled 35 years of financial records and organized them into a presentation that could be ready on 48 hours' notice. And I went to that dinner in my flannel shirt, in my cracked windshield truck, looking exactly like what Ryan had decided I was. Ryan's house was in Westfield, one of those newer developments where every home looks like it was designed to impress people driving past, rather than the people living inside. All sharp angles, white stone facade, floor-to-ceiling windows that let you see exactly how much furniture cost. He'd paid $1 and $2 million for it 3 years ago. I knew because Leonard had flagged the mortgage application. Ryan had listed his CEO salary as his sole income source. Didn't mention the majority shareholder who'd put him in that chair. He opened the door before I knocked. Sport coat, no tie. The kind of deliberately casual that takes effort. He'd been waiting by the door. Dad, he stepped back to let me in. Glad you could make it. No hug. We'd stopped doing that somewhere in the last 2 years, and neither of us had marked the moment it ended. The house smelled like something expensive from a candle or a diffuser. One of those scents designed to signal that the people inside had taste. Corinne appeared from the kitchen, moving with the practiced warmth of someone who'd rehearsed the greeting. She touched my arm, said it was so good to see me, asked if I'd had any trouble with traffic. Her eyes were already moving past me as she said it. Gerald and Nadine Hartwell were seated at the dining room table when I walked in. Gerald stood, extended his hand, gave me the firm shake of a man who uses handshakes to establish something. He was 66, broad through the shoulders, silver hair cut close. The kind of man who'd been the tallest person in most rooms he'd walked into and had organized his personality around that fact. "Earl," he said, "good to see you." Nadine smiled from her chair. She didn't stand. We sat. Corinne had prepared the kind of meal that signals occasion, not a regular Tuesday dinner, but something staged. Good wine, real linen napkins, courses. I ate, and I listened, and I let the conversation go where they were steering it. Gerald talked about the real estate market, commercial vacancy rates, interest rates. Ryan talked about the expansion project in broad terms, the new logistics yard, the capacity it would add, what it meant for the company's next 5 years. He used the word "my company" twice inside 10 minutes, I counted. Corinne asked me about my house, whether I'd had any work done on it recently. I said I'd replaced some weather stripping on the garage door. She nodded like I'd confirmed something she already believed. Nadine mentioned a friend whose husband had recently moved into a senior living community in Scottsdale. Lovely place, she said. He'd been resistant at first, but now he loved it. Very active community. They had a woodworking shop. I nodded and ate my salmon. The small talk ran its course, the way small talk does when nobody at the table actually wants to be making it. Then Corinne cleared the main course plates, and when she came back from the kitchen, she gave Ryan a look I wasn't supposed to notice. He reached down beside his chair and brought up a manila folder, set it on the table in front of him. Didn't slide it to me yet, just let it sit there while he arranged his words. "Dad, we've been wanting to talk to you about some things, about your situation." "My situation," I said, "living arrangements, long-term planning." He opened the folder and took out a brochure, set it in front of me. Sunrise Commons. Photos on the cover of older people in a sunlit common room, playing cards, reading, looking content with where they'd ended up. "We've done some research. This place has a strong reputation, independent living units, full medical support on site, a lot of social programming." I picked it up, looked at it. Gerald leaned forward. "Earl, at your age, living alone in that house makes less and less sense. Corinne and Ryan have put real thought into this." Corinne's voice was carefully soft. "We worry about you, Earl. If something happened, a fall, a health issue, there's no one close by. It's not safe." I set the brochure down. Under it in the folder, I could see the edges of other documents. Legal-size pages, more formal. I didn't reach for them yet. "What's in the rest of the folder?" I asked. Ryan pulled out the other pages and laid them flat. Power of attorney forms. A property transfer agreement for the Birchwood Lane house. And beneath that, a document from a law firm I didn't recognize, something with the words "petition for guardianship" visible in the header. "The house has equity," Ryan said. "Significant equity. Combined with the Route 9 property, we're talking about enough to cover your care at Sunrise Commons for a long time and still leave something over. It makes financial sense." I looked up at him. "The Route 9 property. Birchwood Holdings, we've made several offers. The owner won't negotiate." He paused. We think we can resolve that separately, but your house is the priority here. And if I don't want to sell, the room got quieter than a room with 5 people in it should be able to get. Ryan glanced at Gerald once, quick, almost involuntary, then back at me. Then we'd need to look at other options. We've spoken with an attorney about a guardianship petition. If there's a case to be made that you're not managing independently, living alone, no family support nearby, financial decisions that don't serve your own interests, a court could appoint someone to help manage those decisions for you. He said it the way he'd say anything in a board meeting. Level prepared. Like he'd run through the language in advance and was now delivering it cleanly. CEO voice, not son voice. Corinne added, "It would really just be about making sure you're protected, Earl." Gerald nodded. Nadine folded her hands. I sat with that for a moment. My son had just told me in his dining room, over a staged dinner with his in-laws as witnesses, that if I didn't sign over my house and my land, he would petition a court to have me declared incompetent. I reached into my jacket pocket and took out my phone. Nobody said anything while I dialed. The only sound was the faint clink of Nadine setting her wine glass down too carefully. "There's something I should have mentioned earlier," I said. "Before we go any further with this," Ryan frowned. "Who are you calling?" I didn't answer. The line connected on the second ring. Parrish speaking. Gerald shifted in his chair. Corinne looked at Ryan. Ryan was watching my phone like it might explain itself. "Leonard, you there?" "Yes, Mr. Grady." "Go ahead." The name landed in the room the way a dropped glass lands that half-second before anyone reacts. Ryan's expression moved through confusion, then something harder to read. His mouth opened slightly and stayed that way. "Activate Clause 14 of the shareholder agreement," I said. "Freeze all company assets pending emergency board review. Prepare termination documentation for the current CEO position. Full board meeting Monday, 9 a.m., mandatory attendance. Already drafting it. Notifications will go out tonight. Anything else?" "That's all for now." "Thank you, Leonard." I ended the call and set the phone on the table next to the nursing home brochure. 5 people in the room and not one of them made a sound. Ryan's face had gone through several more changes by then and hadn't settled on any of them. Gerald sat back slowly in his chair, like the air had gone out of something. Corinne's hand was flat on the table in front of her, perfectly still. Nadine was looking at her husband. "Shareholder agreement," Ryan finally said. The word came out quiet, like he was thinking out loud. "Clause 14. He looked up. Why does Leonard Parrish know your name?" "Because he's worked for me for 20 years. He's the board's outside counsel. He's my attorney who also serves the board." "There's a difference. He's served my interests since before you knew what a board was." Ryan pushed back slightly from the table, not standing, just creating distance. "You're a shareholder. I'm the shareholder. 51%. Majority interest. I've held it since 1989 when I filed the original incorporation papers for Grady Electrical and Construction in Cook County with $11,000 in startup capital and a used van." Gerald made a sound that wasn't quite a word. "The company you've been running as CEO for the past 4 years, I continued. "The salary that covers this mortgage, the expense account, the company vehicle, all of it exists because I built that business from nothing and decided 8 years ago to bring you in and give you a shot at running it. I approved your CEO appointment. The board vote went the way it did because I said so." Ryan stood up. His chair scraped back and he stood there with his hands at his sides. "You're telling me," he stopped, started again. "You own the company. I'm the company. Then why," his voice cracked slightly on the word. He steadied it. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" "Why let me think because I wanted to see who you'd become when you thought nobody important was watching. That one landed, I could see it." Corinne spoke for the first time since the phone call. "Earl, I think there's been a misunderstanding about what tonight was." "There's no misunderstanding, Corinne." I kept my voice even. "I want to be clear about what happened in this room tonight. My son presented me with a nursing home brochure and legal documents for a property transfer. He told me that if I didn't sign, he would file a guardianship petition claiming I was mentally incompetent. That is elder financial abuse. That is coercion. And every word of it is on tape. Silence. Illinois is a one-party consent state. I've been recording since I walked in." Gerald's jaw tightened. Corinne looked at the table. Ryan stood completely still. "The board meets Monday at 9 a.m., I said. "Leonard will be presenting the shareholder agreement, the financial history of the company, and the audio from tonight. The board will vote on termination of the current CEO. Given that the majority shareholder is requesting that vote, I think we both know how it goes." Ryan moved then. He came around the table toward me. Not aggressive, more like a man who doesn't know what else to do with his body. "Dad, please." We were trying to think about what's practical. The expansion project is important. The land on Route 9 is the last piece we need. And you thought I was an old man with no options. He stopped. "You sat across from me at this table and told me a court would take away my right to make my own decisions. You used your in-laws as an audience. You had the paperwork ready. I picked up the folder and held it. This took planning, Ryan. This wasn't a conversation. This was a procedure." He didn't have an answer for that. Gerald tried once, said something about the bigger picture, about what was good for the company long term. I looked at him and he stopped talking. Corinne sat with her arms crossed, staring at the centerpiece on the table. Nadine hadn't spoken in several minutes. I stood up. My knees ached the way they always did after sitting in a chair that was more about style than comfort. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. "I'll see myself out," I said. "Ryan, get some sleep this weekend. Monday is going to be a long day." I drove home on empty roads, heater running, hands steady on the wheel. The city thinned out into suburbs, and the suburbs thinned into the quieter streets around Birchwood Lane. I pulled into my driveway, sat in the truck for a minute with the engine off, and looked at my house. Same house for 27 years. Same porch light I'd replaced 3 times. Same crack in the front walk I kept meaning to patch. Nobody was taking it. I went inside, made a cup of coffee, and called Leonard to go over Monday's agenda. Ryan called Saturday morning at 7:14. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 9:40. Same. The message he left the second time was long, his voice careful and controlled in the way people sound when they've rehearsed what they're going to say, but can still hear themselves falling short of it. He said he wanted to talk. He said things had gotten out of hand. He said he hoped we could work something out before Monday. I didn't call back. Gerald Hartwell called Leonard on Saturday afternoon. Leonard told him the board meeting was proceeding as scheduled, and that any communication regarding company matters should go through proper channels. Gerald apparently had more to say about that. Leonard let him finish and then repeated what he'd said. That was the end of that call. Sunday, I changed the oil in my truck, fixed a loose hinge on the back gate, and ate dinner in front of the TV. Slept fine. Monday came in cold and gray, the kind of November morning that doesn't apologize for itself. I put on the suit I kept in the back of my closet, the one I wore to quarterly board reviews when I attended by video call from Leonard's office. Dark navy, nothing flashy. I'd had it for 11 years, and it still fit the same. I drove downtown, parked in the structure across from the building, and met Leonard in the lobby at 8:45. He was already there, briefcase in hand, looking the way he always looked, like a man who had accounted for every variable and was mildly curious to see which ones would show up. "Board's assembled," he said, as we walked to the elevator. "Full attendance. They're aware this is significant. Most of them have never seen you in person. How's Ryan? He arrived 20 minutes ago. His father-in-law is with him." I nodded. The elevator opened on the 22nd floor. The boardroom ran the width of the building, windows facing the river, a table long enough to seat 16. 8 board members stood when I walked in. Not because anyone told them to. Just because the room shifted when the majority shareholder walked into it for the first time, and people respond to that whether they plan to or not. Phyllis Granger was nearest to me, CFO, 57, had been with the company for 12 years. She extended her hand and held the grip a beat longer than a standard handshake. Perry Dunham, who ran his own contracting operation and held 6% of the company, gave me a nod that said he understood why we were all here. Clyde Booker, the oldest board member at 60, just looked at me steadily with the expression of a man who'd been waiting for this meeting for longer than he'd been comfortable admitting. Ryan sat at the far end of the table, Gerald beside him, both in suits, both with the composed posture of men who'd agreed beforehand to appear unshaken no matter what. I took my seat at the head of the table. Leonard activated the screen on the wall behind me. The first image was a photograph of the Sunrise Commons brochure, enlarged enough that everyone in the room could read the tagline printed across the bottom. Beside it, scanned copies of the power of attorney forms and the guardianship petition, time-stamped from Friday evening. "Friday night," I said, "the current CEO of this company invited me to his home for dinner. In attendance were his wife, his father-in-law, and his mother-in-law. Over the course of that dinner, I was presented with documents requesting that I sign over power of attorney for my personal finances and transfer title of my primary residence. When I indicated I would not be signing, I was informed that a guardianship petition would be filed claiming I was mentally incompetent to manage my own affairs. I paused. This was not a family conversation. It was a prepared legal procedure. The documents were drafted in advance. An attorney had already been retained. Leonard played 90 seconds of audio from Friday night. Ryan's voice filled the room, level and rehearsed, explaining the guardianship option, then Gerald's voice, reinforcing it, then Corinne's, framing it as concern. The room was very quiet when it ended. Phyllis had her hands flat on the table. Perry was looking at Ryan with an expression that had moved past surprise and into something cooler. Clyde Booker had not looked away from the screen. Ryan tried. I'll give him that. He started to speak, something about context, about the full picture not being represented, about family dynamics being more complicated than a recording could capture. He got about 4 sentences in before Phyllis Granger cut across him. I move for immediate termination of Ryan Grady as CEO and removal from all board positions, effective today. Seconded, said Perry Dunham. All in favor. 8 hands. Ryan sat with his eyes on the table. Gerald put a hand on his arm and said something quietly. Whatever it was, Ryan didn't respond to it. Motion carries, I said. Ryan, your access to company systems, accounts, and facilities is terminated as of this moment. Your personal items from the office will be packed and delivered to your home this week. There is no severance. Security was waiting outside the boardroom doors, 2 of them, professional and quiet about it. Ryan stood slowly. He looked at me once before he walked out. I don't know what he was looking for in my face. I don't know if he found it. Gerald stood to follow him. At the door, he turned back and looked at me with the expression of a man recalculating something he'd been confident about for a long time. He didn't say anything. Then he left. The board stayed for another hour. We discussed interim leadership, the succession plan, and the Route 9 land acquisition. I agreed to sell the 11 acres through Birchwood Holdings at fair market value, $500,000, the last offer on the table. No penalty, no premium, just business. The expansion project was good for the company. It had always been good for the company. That part wasn't Ryan's fault. I drove home the long way, out along the river road, windows cracked despite the cold. The city gave way to suburbs. Suburbs gave way to the quieter grid of streets I'd lived in for the better part of 3 decades. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the truck for a minute, the same way I had Friday night. Same house, same porch light, same crack in the front walk I still hadn't patched. Ryan called that evening. I answered this time. The conversation was short, and neither of us said anything we could take back later, which felt like the right place to start. Whether we get anywhere from there is something only time will answer. He's 36. He has a long time to figure out who he wants to be when he's not performing for someone. Some things you can rebuild. Some things you have to let sit for a while first. What I know is this: I spent 35 years building something real. I did it quietly, without announcements, without needing anyone to know how much it was worth. The people who tried to use that quietness against me made the same mistake a lot of people make. They confused patience with surrender. I never surrendered anything in my life. The most dangerous thing you can do to a self-made man is assume that because he stopped talking, he stopped thinking. I built everything they tried to take from me. And when the moment came, one phone call was all it took. Not because I got lucky. Because I never stopped being the man who built it.